It's a good bounce back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end, and so that was that was by design for us to get back to our normal.
Just when it seemed like the storm around Team USA and Caitlin Clark had finally died down, a new bombshell involving NBC has reportedly thrown the entire basketball establishment into chaos. And this time, it isn't about a missed roster spot or a controversial foul call. It's about something much bigger, the battle over who truly controls the future of women's basketball. Behind the scenes, there are whispers of panic. Sources say coaches, executives, and longtime power players are furious because the very thing they fought so hard to prevent is happening anyway. Despite efforts to slow her rise, despite leaving her off the Olympic team, despite trying to protect the old guard, the Caitlin Clark era is moving forward at full speed, powered by billions of media dollars. For months, the message from the establishment was clear. Focus on the team, respect the veterans, don't let one player overshadow the league. They insisted experience mattered more than hype. They believed leaving Clark at home during the Olympics would humble her and prove that the system was bigger than any individual. But this latest move from NBC proves something completely different. You can't hold back a cultural phenomenon. The story that coaches and selection committees tried to sell, that Clark wasn't ready and needed to wait her turn, has just been shattered by the very people funding the sport. Reports suggest the reaction inside Team USA circles has been intense, because what they're beginning to realize is that in the eyes of television networks, a single Caitlin Clark pregame warm-up might be more valuable than an entire collection of gold medals. To understand why this announcement has caused such a meltdown, you have to look at the deeper power struggle that has been brewing for months. This is no longer just about basketball decisions. It's about influence, control, and a complete reshaping of the sport's hierarchy. The friction really began the moment the Olympic roster was announced. Head coach Cheryl Reeve and the selection committee insisted it was strictly a basketball decision. They argued they needed defense, chemistry, and proven veterans who understood international play. On the surface, that explanation sounded reasonable, but to many fans it felt like something else entirely: gatekeeping. Analysts immediately pointed out the obvious. Leaving the most talked about athlete in women's sports off the biggest global stage was a marketing nightmare. NBC, which owns the Olympic broadcasting rights, was reportedly furious at the time. They had been counting on the Caitlin Clark effect to deliver massive ratings. When she was left off the team, network executives were said to be scrambling, trying to understand why the league would seemingly undercut its own exposure. Still, the coaching staff stood their ground. Team USA won gold, and they likely believed that victory would silence all criticism. For a moment, it looked like they were right, but championships don't change economics. While coaches were celebrating on the podium, the business side of sports was telling a very different story. He said the Olympic viewership numbers were solid, but nowhere near the frenzy that surrounds even an average Indiana Fever regular season game. And that reality set the stage for what's happening now. With a new media rights deal worth more than $2 billion about to reshape the league, NBC and its partners are reportedly adjusting their entire strategy. Instead of promoting teams and matchups equally, they are preparing coverage that revolves heavily around Clark. There's talk of specialized camera feeds focused solely on her, documentary-style access following her every move, and primetime scheduling built specifically around when she plays. Standings, rivalries, and traditional storylines are taking a back seat. To longtime coaches like Reeve, this is practically an insult. Their philosophy has always been that the league should be about systems, teamwork, and collective success, not one superstar dominating the spotlight. But the networks are sending a blunt message: we paid for a global attraction, and we intend to showcase her. That shift represents a massive loss of control for the basketball establishment. Coaches can limit her minutes. They can leave her off national teams. They can try to make the game as physical as possible, but they can't stop the cameras from following her every step, and that is where the real frustration is coming from. There's also an uncomfortable emotional layer to all of this, one that many people don't want to admit exists. For years, veteran players sacrificed everything to keep the league afloat. They played overseas in tough conditions just to make a living. They built the WNBA brick by brick. Then a rookie arrives, and suddenly television networks treat her like the center of the universe. When NBC openly signals that Caitlin Clark is their main attraction, it reinforces a painful fear that everyone else has become a supporting character in her story. For a coaching staff that preaches unity and selflessness, this new reality is almost impossible to accept. How do you convince players to put the team first when the league's biggest media partner is openly rewarding individual stardom above all else? That contradiction is at the heart of this entire conflict, and whether the old guard likes it or not, the direction of women's basketball is being decided, not in locker rooms, but in boardrooms. The takeover is already underway. All of this has created a deeply divided atmosphere inside the basketball world. On one side, you have players and insiders who resent Caitlin Clark and feel validated in their frustration. On the other, you have those who believe she is finally bringing the league the spotlight it has always deserved. And caught in the middle of that clash are the coaches, desperately trying to hold things together in an environment where the entire landscape has shifted overnight. This tension goes far beyond bruised egos. At its core, it's about something much more serious. The fear of becoming invisible. Because if a gold medal winning roster can be overshadowed by a rookie who wasn't even on the team, then what does that medal truly represent in today's marketplace? If championships don't command attention anymore, what actually does? And of course, underneath all of it is the one factor that drives every major conflict in sports: money. Caitlin Clark's presence has already transformed the financial structure of the WNBA. Her impact helped accelerate conversations about charter flights, sponsorship growth, and increased investment across the league. The problem is that the benefits of that attention aren't being spread evenly. Coaches and veterans understand exactly where this is heading. NBC's new approach effectively positions Clark as the central figure of the entire league. That means endorsement opportunities, media deals, special features, and long-term branding will overwhelmingly flow in her direction. Meanwhile, many established stars, despite years of success and sacrifice, risk being pushed to the background. According to insiders, several influential figures within the Team USA circle see this new direction as a direct attack on the idea of fairness. In their minds, primetime coverage should belong to the teams and players who earned it by winning. But television has never worked that way. Broadcasting isn't built on merit, it runs on ratings. And what we're witnessing now is the old guard coming to terms with a harsh reality. No matter how many games they win, they cannot outshine a cultural phenomenon. They can dominate opponents on the court, but they can't defeat trends, algorithms, and public fascination. For people who have spent their entire careers believing that victory is the ultimate currency, that realization is nothing short of terrifying. Looking ahead, the situation only gets more complicated. The 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles are fast approaching, and NBC will once again control the broadcast. Does anyone honestly believe the network will tolerate Caitlin Clark being left off the roster for a home soil Olympics? There is virtually zero chance of that happening. This latest shift feels less like a routine business decision and more like a clear message to USA basketball: adapt to the new reality or get left behind. The same coaches and decision makers who felt empowered to exclude her in 2024 are likely recognizing that their independence is fading. When billions of dollars are on the line, networks don't sit quietly on the sidelines. They influence outcomes, and that loss of control is fueling a lot of the anger we're hearing about. No coach wants to feel like a television executive is dictating lineup decisions. But when that executive represents a $2 billion investment, the balance of power changes instantly. For decades, players and coaches were considered the true power brokers because they were the product. Now, the equation has flipped. The product, in the eyes of the media, has become one transcendent star named Caitlin Clark, and everyone else is being positioned around her. Whether they like it or not, that is the new order of women's basketball. It's a tough situation, and it's easy to understand why emotions are boiling over. When pride, legacy, and control feel threatened, reactions become unpredictable, especially in a sport as physical as basketball. If coaches and veteran players already feel overshadowed by the media obsession with Caitlin Clark, how does that frustration show up once the game actually begins? We've already seen flashes of it. Hard fouls, rough play, and an obvious increase in physical intensity whenever Clark steps on the floor. Moments like the infamous hit from Chennedy Carter are perfect examples. And this new NBC development could easily make things worse, because if opposing players start to believe that the spotlight is unfairly tilted in Clark's direction, some of them may respond the only way they know how, by trying to send a message on the court. That creates a dangerous loop. The media builds her up, certain veterans grow more irritated, the physicality rises, then the media highlights that physicality, which generates even more attention, and suddenly the entire league gets pulled into a cycle of manufactured drama. From the perspective of Team USA coaches, this is a nightmare scenario. They want a league built on fundamentals and competition, not headlines and controversy, yet they're watching the sport they've dedicated their lives to slowly turn into a reality show, and they have almost no ability to stop it, because the uncomfortable truth is that fans are loving every second of it. There's also a bigger picture here that goes beyond the WNBA itself. With the rise of the unrivaled league and other offseason opportunities, Clark no longer needs to rely solely on traditional basketball structures to build her career. If the established system continues to treat her like an outsider, she has more options than ever before. She can invest in her own ventures, explore alternative leagues, or create brand partnerships completely independent of Team USA or the WNBA. NBC clearly understands this reality. They aren't just investing in women's basketball, they're investing specifically in Caitlin Clark, and that changes everything. If Clark chose to play in a new 3-on-3 league, organize special exhibition events, or even build her own off-season platform, NBC would almost certainly pay huge money to broadcast it. That possibility terrifies the traditional power structure. Team USA and league officials need her inside their ecosystem to keep that ecosystem relevant. But by sidelining her and trying to limit her influence, they may have accidentally pushed her toward becoming her own independent force. This latest announcement is essentially confirmation that she has outgrown the system that tried to contain her. And for coaches who have spent decades preaching that no individual is bigger than the team, that is an incredibly bitter pill to swallow. In today's sports landscape, that old motto simply doesn't hold up anymore. Then there are the fans, who are watching all of this unfold with obvious satisfaction. Social media has been ruthless, with many supporters openly celebrating what they see as poetic justice. After months of dismissive comments from established stars like Diana Taurasi about Clark needing a reality check, seeing NBC double down on her anyway feels like vindication. To a huge portion of the audience, this move looks like the market correcting a mistake made by the basketball establishment, and that public reaction only deepens the frustration inside Team USA circles. It's one thing to deal with criticism from random internet users, it's another thing entirely to be effectively overruled by the very network paying the bill. The divide between basketball traditionalists and everyday fans has never been more obvious. Coaches are trying to talk about defensive schemes and long-term legacy, while the general audience just wants to watch Caitlin Clark launch shots from the logo. Those two priorities no longer align. At the center of much of this tension is Cheryl Reeve, who has become the main face of the controversy. As both the head coach of Team USA and the Minnesota Lynx, she occupies a uniquely powerful position, and many believe that dual role has complicated things. Critics argue that her influence over the Olympic roster created a conflict of interest, protecting established veterans and familiar faces instead of embracing the future of the sport. When Reeve insisted that Clark's exclusion was purely a basketball decision, large portions of the fan base didn't believe her, and now, with NBC essentially pushing the exact opposite philosophy, it has to feel like a direct challenge to her authority. What we're seeing isn't just a momentary outburst of frustration, it's the dawning realization that an entire era is coming to an end. The age where coaches controlled the narrative is fading. In its place is a new model, one driven by star power, entertainment value, and players who carry global influence. And like it or not, that new era has already begun. The veterans of this league remember a very different era. They remember when airtime was scarce, when recognition was almost non-existent, and when many of them had to pay their own way just to keep playing professionally. For years, they built this sport in relative obscurity, fighting for every small ounce of attention. So when a rookie arrives and immediately gets treated like a global superstar, it naturally stirs up old wounds. Seeing Caitlin Clark welcomed with national television deals, packed arenas, and non-stop media coverage brings out emotions that go far beyond simple jealousy. For some, it feels like the years of struggle are being erased overnight, but the uncomfortable reality is impossible to ignore. For decades, the WNBA survived largely because the NBA helped keep it afloat. The league was losing money year after year, unable to break into the mainstream in a meaningful way. That financial picture didn't begin to truly change until until Clark entered the scene and transformed the economics of women's basketball. NBC isn't making these decisions out of kindness. They are acting like any major corporation would, investing heavily in the product that delivers the biggest return. And right now, that product is Caitlin Clark. From the perspective of Team USA coaches, this shift probably feels unfair, but at the end of the day, they are trying to fight against basic market forces, and that is a battle no sports organization ever wins. Adding even more complexity is the emergence of the Unrivaled League, founded by Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier as a high-profile off-season alternative. The concept is promising, but insiders say there is one major problem. Without Clark's involvement, the league's ceiling is dramatically lowered. That creates an awkward and almost ironic situation. Many of the same players and decision-makers connected to the system that kept her on the outside now find themselves needing her star power to make their own projects succeed. If Clark chooses not to participate, it directly impacts their bottom line. And with NBC doubling down on her importance, it only reinforces the fact that she holds the real leverage inside Team USA circles. And this latest development has likely sparked plenty of finger-pointing. Some are probably blaming the media, others are blaming fans, and a few may be quietly admitting that pushing away the most influential figure in the sport was a massive miscalculation. They believed they could humble her. Instead, they turned her into an even bigger force. The upcoming seasons are going to be a fascinating test of human nature. You'll have a league that is thriving financially because of Caitlin Clark, while many of the people in charge remain uncomfortable with how much influence she wields. So how does NBC handle that tension? Most likely by doing what television always does, following the money and telling the story that draws the most viewers. Cameras will continue to focus on Clark, regardless of how much certain coaches dislike it. That sets up a strange split reality, one narrative being pushed by the broadcasts, centered on her rise, and another being pushed by traditional basketball minds who want the focus to remain on systems and teams. And that conflict is exactly what makes this so compelling. It's the reason ratings are soaring and social media engagement is exploding. This isn't just about wins and losses anymore. It's about personalities, power struggles, and millions of dollars hanging in the balance. As the playoffs approach and another Olympic cycle looms, that tension is only going to intensify. Coaches can hold private meetings and vent their frustrations all they want, but the message from the business side of the sport couldn't be clearer. The landscape has changed, and there's no going back. What we're witnessing right now is more than simple drama. It's a complete transformation of how women's basketball operates. For generations, this was a sport where respect was earned slowly, through years of service and quiet dedication. You waited in line, you paid your dues. Eventually, your moment came. Caitlin Clark didn't follow that path, not because she refused to, but because the world pushed her to the front of it. The coaches tried to apply old rules to a brand new reality, and they lost that battle. This NBC announcement is essentially the final confirmation of that defeat. The outrage, the reported arguments, the behind-the-scenes frustration, it's all just the reaction of an era realizing it no longer controls the game. They can complain, they can resist, they can rage against the shift as much as they want. But as long as television networks are chasing ratings and fans are tuning in by the millions, the direction of the sport is already decided. Like it or not, Caitlin Clark is now steering the ship, and no amount of traditional thinking can change that.